Welcome to Wealthing Talks. I am your host, Alicia Castillo Holley, bringing you real-life conversations from Silicon Valley or somewhere around the world. We will talk about disruptors, angel investments, venture capital, and of course, family offices. Join me along with my children, their families, friends, disruptors, and investors as we explore the fascinating world of creating wealth in a completely different and authentic way. Welcome, everybody. This is a great podcast. It is a pleasure to introduce you to Sunny Wang, my dear friend. We met years ago, and she now founded TrueLeap. Very passionate about human connections, about education, about lifting the bar for everybody. So we have the most fun together. Sunny, welcome so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for inviting me. Such a pleasure. Always fun to hang out with you intellectually and across the board.
Yeah, it is fantastic. Tell us, how did you get here? How did you get to do this?
Oh my, it's been a long journey. I never thought I would be building companies and tackling the world's most pressing problems. I just started as an academic. I was doing my PhD, looking at how innovation diffuse in a social network. My background is behavioral science. I came to the United States as an international student. And that's how I met my now partner, Sandeep, who came to also study for his PhD in geology from India. So essentially, we were almost like two fresh off the boat international student teaching, actually, as associate instructors. And that's how we met. And our career evolved. I became a professor. I've been teaching in business school for the past 20 years. And he was in corporate venture building. And eventually we joined forces now building TrueLeap. And along the way, we also started our own venture studio, Born Global Ventures, essentially supporting globally born entrepreneurs, foreign-born immigrants. As you know, 55% of US unicorns were built by foreign-born immigrant founders. And we want to bridge the gap between talents and capital. And then we also saw that, hey, 85% of the world's population live in global south, but they don't really have access to education technology. And that's really when we saw we can't just wait at the table for opportunities. We really need to get to the root cause. And that's what motivated us to start TrueLeap, because it's in the spirit of leapfrog. We actually believe emerging markets, developing economies will be leading the adoption of the next wave of technology, as opposed to slacking behind, because it's a green field. There's not much resistance when it comes to technology adoption. So that's where I came from an international student to as a behavioral scientist, business professor, venture builder, and now founder of TrueLeap.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about TrueLeap.
Absolutely. So as someone who's been teaching for 20 years, actually keep counting, by now it's 23, including 12, 13 years online, I've always been using learning management system. And then, seeing how complicated and expensive it is, although universities can afford because of the tuition, but really the rest of the world does not have the digital infrastructure, the high speed, and the fancy devices. And that's really when, as I mentioned earlier, the majority of human population actually live in emerging markets, developing economies, so-called global south, but they don't have access to quality content. And you would argue, hey, there's now Coursera or Udemy or even Khan Academy that's all available, but really it's not built for global south. The price point may seem reasonable here for our income level, but over there, let's say in Africa, in India, people are not gonna bring allocate a huge percentage of their income. So essentially, the infrastructure is not there, and you can also just provide the content or the software or the hardware. So essentially what we came up with is really what I call come from market as opposed to go to market. We identify the needs of local communities, and we are actually bringing a combination of components all together as an integrated ecosystem that includes not only the e-learning software, but also the hardware infrastructure, including data center, technology labs, everything it takes, and also the high quality content working with our content partners. And then we provide training, just like train the trainers, programs and ongoing maintenance, not to mention data analytics. Don't even get me started on AI and the lack of global south in terms of AI applications. So I hope it makes
Exactly.
sense. Like you have to meet people where they are.
Wow, I love I never heard that concept. I love the concept come to market instead of go to market.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, I learned so much with podcast. This is fascinating. Can I use it?
Absolutely. In
Oh
fact,
my
I wrote
gosh,
about
I
this.
am going to use it. Come to
Yeah,
market.
because my background coming from behavioral science, psychology and consumer psychology, industrial organizational psychology, and marketing, we actually believe, marketing shouldn't be an afterthought when you go to market after you build something. You actually want to build with your users. And in this case, when we go to, countries like uh, DRC, Congo, and Ghana and Angola, we actually work with local partners very closely to discover what do we need? What is the top priority of this community so that we can bring all it takes instead of, okay, we just have, our SaaS in the cloud, it's accessible, but honestly, without the discovery of whatever it takes, it's going to be in another universe, in the cloud, so to speak, and not grounded with boots on the ground and, very locally rooted. And that's really our approach. Come from market and,
Oh, I love
work
it. I
with
love
our
it.
local partners and communities.
Well, I love it. And for those of you that are listening or watching, Sunny also helped us. We did a study last year about it was angel investors and access to deals. And it was fascinating because the intern that did that was evaluating the products of choice. And the basic understanding was that if you have more choices, you're less satisfied, but it doesn't apply to angel investing. We thought it did, but it didn't apply. And Sunny helped us. And it's just that understanding about the market that is so valuable. And, I'm an academic by training and I love research. So that's why Sunny and I get along so well. And it's that sort of creating new content and figuring out, oh, there are the holes here. This is the dots. This is how we connect. So but this come to market is fascinating. I love it. I love it. This is going to be the concept of the podcast. That is fantastic. How
Oh,
do people reach TrueLeap? What do you need? How can help? How can always other people come and interact with you?
yeah, absolutely. Because it is really a global crisis, honestly. Because, on the one hand, we all believe AI is going to revolutionize learning, and there's no doubt about it. But on the other hand, there's also the rest of the world that doesn't really have any digital infrastructure. So essentially, we need all the resources and all the partners to really lift this part. If I may share a few data points, Alicia, because going back to your earlier point, there's so much scientific venture building, right? I mean, coming from a scientist background with empirical data, there's actually a lot of capital efficient way of building venture so that you bring the most return on investment. So if you look at data, it really can inform you on your decision making as founders, but also as investors. In fact, the fact that we're allocating our time and energy and our money is because from an investor standpoint, this is where the future is going. If I may share, some demographics data, I'm sure coming from a global audience, Alicia, your community understand the fact that fertility rate is really dramatically shifting right now. On average, I'm going to ask our audience to guess what is the number of children a woman need to have on average for a population to be sustainable. In other words, how many kids does a woman need to have for a population to remain even, not decline, not to mention growth?
I think it's 2.4. It's more than 2, but I don't remember.
2.1. You're right. It has to be more than 2 because there's,
Because people
unpredictable
die.
factors, right? So
My grandson thinks he's not gonna die, but I know I am.
well, uh, the fact is, all these developed economies have been declining when it comes to fertility rate, and countries like Japan, China, they're like about 1, and the lowest is actually Korea. It's
Yeah.
at 0.7. In other words, and we've seen that in Europe for a long time, and it's happening in the United States too. We are now at 1.7, which means we're becoming an aging population. And for investors, of course, in the United States, that means we need to focus on lifelong
Longevity.
learning.
I invest in longevity.
Yeah, longevity, essentially, healthcare, senior care, but also lifelong learning, not just youth, but also ongoing, because the workforce needs to be redeveloped. And of course, robotics. Now, zooming into TrueLeap, that's the reason we are focusing on what we call cultivating the global markets, because by 2100, guys, it sounds like a far away, but look, now we're already 2025. By 2100, out of 5 people on Earth, there will be 2 from Africa and 2 from Asia and 1 from the rest of the world. So in other words, the world's economy and the world's innovation entrepreneurship will be largely powered by, workforce and talents from the global south, so to speak, but really, powered by fast growing countries in Africa, in Southeast Asia. So essentially what we are doing is really to addressing the lack of digital infrastructure for talent development, for workforce development, and not to mention, of course, lifelong, in other words, from K through 12 to skills and to entrepreneurship to venture investing. So the way we do this, the way we do this is actually very locally rooted and community centric. In other words, people think when it comes to education, it's charity. No, it's actually the most return on investment
Yes.
you can unleash and the most value you can create. And the impact lasts for generations. The reason is we actually partner with our local with local leaders and local experts so we can help them scale their impact. Scalability is really what follows accessibility, of course, affordability, accessibility, but also scalability, because the vast, really day and night when it comes to the impact we can make on the number of lives and the number of societies. So what we do is to partner with local community and local experts so they can monetize their expertise. Let's say in Congo, let's use these countries as examples. Not only the digital literacy, but also English, because they are a French-speaking country, but they have amazing resources that they want to trade with other countries that are English-speaking. So for them, English is a priority, and we're working with English teachers who are very few. Remember, there's a shortage of teacher. So essentially, they can actually reach, instead of a classroom of a few hundreds of students, now they can actually reach hundreds of thousands of students so that they can lift entire generation. By the way, their fertility rate is every woman having 6 kids. Imagine. Now with Ghana, again, remember, come from market, they need more support on higher education and entrepreneurship. So we're working with our local partner, IBAN World, to really lift another generation of entrepreneurs. And Alicia, I know you're going to love this. We're currently planning the inaugural Technology University Women in Entrepreneurship Summit so that we can actually help women turning their STEM skills and knowledge into addressing local problems through entrepreneurship. And then, I'll share more off the record of things that we're planning in Angola. And
no, share it here. I mean, we'll put it on the resources. And there's so many opportunities that are aligned, and there's so much power in the community in general. A few years ago, when I moved here, listen to me. 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
There was a program run by the Foreign Affairs Department or something, and they would bring 30 to 40 African working women to come to Silicon Valley and work along executives here, so they can absorb the Silicon Valley mindset, which is, fall forward, support each other, minimal viable products, take high risks, and etc. But the most important part is, I would say 100% of the women that came here, they had many kids. And the executives here were shocked because they had to be here 6 months. And they said, how do you do that? And I'm like, what do you mean, how do I do that? And they're like, well, who's taking care of our kids? And they were like, I don't know, the father, my mom, my sister, my neighbors. So it was a sense of, you're not alone raising your kid. And I think that is so essential in, in raising kids. It's not the mom or the mom and the dad, which I've seen in many developed countries. And because I lived in so many developed and developing countries, I see that contrast, and it's so refreshing to take care of other kids and to just mess it all up. So I think that's really, really cool. And then when you talk about education, I remember a long time ago, I heard this quote: if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. I mean,
the cost of ignorance, right?
And it's mind blowing, because sometimes you just have to educate 1, 2, or 3 people, and they lift the entire community. And that has been proven in India, has been proven in Latin America as well. When I was, oh my gosh, I would say almost 45 years ago, I grew up in Venezuela. Venezuela had a high rate of illiteracy. So they had a program where high school kids could go and teach people who didn't know how to read and write. And I was part of that. And it was funny. I mean, these people knew how to count. They had created their own symbols to make, so they had come up with something. But I never found somebody so resilient and so interested in learning how to read and write that the people that couldn't read and write. And the things that they didn't know how to sign, they would, this is my signature, but they didn't know what it was. They couldn't read a label. They did read numbers, but there were so many things that they couldn't read. They couldn't read a street address. And to me, being educated is like, what do you mean? What happened to you? And they said, well, we just didn't go to school. We were in the rural area. There was no teachers. And now technology can change all of that. So that's why I'm so in love with TrueLeap. And I need to put you in touch with Engine, because I'm a member of Engine. They teach Ukrainians how to practice English one-on-one, and they have a whole platform. I'll put that. I mean, this is part of why we do this podcast too. Is, people that are listening, they might be able to say, hey, I can connect with you. It's not just throwing information at people, but also connecting, building a community, building a tribe. Which
You're right, Alicia. In fact, your podcast itself is education, because you're actually, sharing a lot of opportunities with investors, with all the subject matter experts, so that they can actually put where their efforts can make the most impact, right? So, yeah, but following your initial, your earlier point about how much value education can add, instead of a charity, closing the global education gap can actually unleash about 10 trillion US dollars in economic value. Like, the kids you just mentioned, with or without education, that's the huge difference it can make, because investing in education not only brings higher individual earnings, but also higher GDP, more productive workforce, and lower poverty, not to mention innovation, entrepreneurship. And that's really why we came from innovation, entrepreneurship, venture investing, and we saw the root cause for education. And by the way, if you want to sell anything, the first step is to educate, because for innovation to adopt, to impact more, like, you just really need to share information. And to your point, school education is important, but nowadays with technology, you can actually make it more accessible wherever you are. In our case, as long as someone has a simple Android phone without even high-speed internet, if they have a little signal, they can join online, either asynchronized or synchronized. So we have events, we have courses, we also have community, because like you said earlier, it is really a holistic approach. You've heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a kid, right? That village is also what it takes to educate a person, turn someone, from the ignorant side to really the talent, the global talent, wherever they are, that will power our future innovation and our future economy globally.
Yeah, and nobody loses.
Exactly.
Nobody loses. Yeah, I mean, everybody benefits because you also expand the market.
Yep.
And you solve a lot of inefficiencies, because if people can communicate, can read and write, I mean, and then can learn tools. So this is I love this. I mean, as people can tell. I mean, Sunny and I, when we would get together, like energy. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we're just like echoing each other's brainwaves, because the story of our work, Alicia, is the story of our lives. We lived through, and we are the proven evidence of what education can do for a little girl from Venezuela, from China. I mean, my parents came from the generation where they had to eat tree barks. I mean, that's how
Wow.
economic development has lifted a country because of education. I mean, they were educated, and now because of my education, I became a business professor. But I don't want to just stop here, because if I can impact hundreds of millions or the next billion of our global talent, why would I just get my tenure and college for the rest of my life? So I think you and I are definitely on the same tune about the impact.
Absolutely. I mean, I've studied so much in formal education. I have so many degrees, but definitely I always saw education as a way to progress, and I believe in that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm fully aware of that. And I want to end this part of the podcast with a note for people, but then I want to move into another question.
Mm-hmm.
And the note is, we don't need more extraordinary people. We need more ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And we can only do that by connecting people. There's no other way. So, and that is part of the big goal of this podcast, is to stay away from the extraordinary people that are bluffing about how important they are, into these people that are everyday people doing extraordinary things, and encouraging other people to jump in that wagon, or to create their own wagon, and to have a common sense of a person, not just the money, which, it's important to me. I'm an investor, but we're money first, but not money only. But this is fantastic. But I want to get into a lesson for other entrepreneurs. So if you can share with us, what has been the biggest lesson for you, the lesson that you didn't know that you needed in your journey
I
as an
think
entrepreneur?
it goes back to learning. I think it is really, the unlearn part. Like essentially, you just have to unlearn to be able to release yourself and embrace something that's entirely new. Because I guess, as academics, right, we have the right way of doing things, but in reality, it is really not the right way or wrong way. It's what works. So, in other words, when we built TrueLeap, we thought, okay, we have the next generation of education technology, digital learning platform. Let's go. But then the reality is teaching us so much. So I learned to be humble, to respect the local partners and users, because they know more than our entire lives. They know what are the real challenges. They know more than what we learned from our PhD training, because they know what works. So we trust our local partners in terms of the kind of solution. We bring everything it takes, but we configure it based on what the local community needs. And that's why we believe it's a global solution with a very community-centric, but also locally rooted solution that serves. I guess my keyword is really just to unlearn what you thought you know, because once you can conquer that, then the world opens up with tons of possibility, with things that you didn't know before. And the bigger the problem and the bigger the opportunity. And then you will identify the solution as a result.
Oh, that's great. So learn to unlearn.
So that you can learn
You
what works.
can only do that by doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the reality hits you in the face and said, I told you.
Exactly. And then also, on the same note, it's like just be humble and respectful for, like you said, the ordinary people, because they have such wisdom that comes from the ground, and you can learn so much from them. And guess what? As a result, you build the most extraordinary solution that is not just like all the elite version. Honestly, we could start another 3 hours on responsible AI and global application and what's missing. I think you already gave the answer, because it's currently discovered, or say, sorry, it's currently being created by the few elite. In fact, around your neighborhood in the Silicon Valley. But would that apply to the rest of the world? And we are actually tackling that. We are actually turning knowledge into data and turning data into value. And along the way, we are creating so much potential, unleashing so much, I believe, economic value as a result. So that's why, echoing your earlier point, Alicia, it is not just for profit, but also for purpose. So impact and return on investment don't have to be black and white.
Exactly.
We're a zebra company.
Yeah, you don't have to compromise that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
I'm very lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, emerging markets and developing economies, they are ready to take the leap. Just like the days when they, if you remember, cell phone was, US was still in landline when the rest of the world were already shopping online, sending money online. We are still, because we adopted landline when the rest of the world just leapfrogged over that. I think it's happening in education technology and AI and a lot of areas in the world.
Yeah, that is, the typical example for me was when I lived in Chile. Chile was a poorer country than Argentina. Argentina built landlines. Chile went leapfrog, went into online and cell phones very quickly, because they didn't have to, they didn't have the big giants trying to protect the landlines, and they didn't have to pay for that infrastructure either. Mm-hmm. They went whoop on top of it. So that is their example. We have so much to talk about. We need to do another podcast just on AI, but that's not going to be this one. I have one last question for you.
Of course.
And this is what I call the legacy question. So I don't know if you know this, but when I was 13, I fell off a horse and I ended up in coma. So I died, but I didn't die completely. And so I woke up a few days later. But I remember watching me dead, and I'm like, oh gosh, I died. It's like a kid. It's like, oh, I can't believe this happened to me. And then I lost consciousness, and then I regained consciousness a few days later. But ever since, I always think, well, there will be a time when I'm no longer here. Mm-hmm. And then I always question myself, who am I when I'm not here in time and space? And that is the question that I love to close the podcast with. Who is Sunny when you're no longer here in time and space?
Wow, that is such a deep question, Alicia. I will definitely put more thoughts throughout the summer.
No. It has to come from your heart.
I actually think, if I can conquer the so-called self, like, I think at the end of the day, there's no such thing as self. I want to see that my effort enabled a world where everybody can learn and everybody can teach. You don't have to be a college professor or a PhD. You can actually turn what you know into value. and you can share, going back to your earlier point. And I hope that I'm the person that put my little effort as a ray of light in the dark, as opposed to a drop in the ocean. I think everybody can do that. And then you just disappear. But then, because of the little ray of light, you are giving all these ordinary people so much power, because they can impact with the tools, with technology. They can actually share what they know with the rest of the world and impact so many lives and generations. So I'd love to play a little role of that world, as humans are heading to, a lot of uncertainty at this time. I actually think we are living in the, most exciting part of most exciting time in human history, honestly. And I guess my answer to your question is, if I can just get to a state that it's not about me or myself, it's about, where the world is heading to. And if I can use my limited lifespan to play a tiny role for that to happen, then it'll be worth it.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much. We're going to close with this. I'll put in the notes where to contact you and TrueLeap. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alicia. Such a pleasure.
So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. This is a typical example where everything is aligned and you find a good fit in the conversations that you have. I hope you enjoyed listening to Sunny and their come from market concept, which is very, very unique. I never heard that. But I also hope that you realize that you don't need to be an extraordinary person to do extraordinary things. You can just channel that talent and energy around. And life is just too short not to use your skills, your talents, and your energy for something that gives you purpose. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'll see you in the next. Thanks for tuning in to our Wealth in Talks. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. To stay connected, visit us at wealthing.com. This is Alicia Castillo Holley, your host, and until next time, yours in Wealthing.